It looks like it.
I think we are.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Dieter Staudinger, first officer here at FearlessFlight with lovely flight attendant Diane. Hi, Diane.
Hi.
And Captain Eric.
There I am.
Yeah, and today is our crew edition, and so we've been talking behind the scenes, and if you want to make note of that, every third Tuesday of the month we're gonna have the three of us as the crew edition of our weekly Fearless Flight live show. So Capt Ron is just like a university student cramming for his final exams on Friday, which will be our prep class for the Air Hollywood flight on Saturday. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. If you're new to the show, this show is all about helping you overcome your fear of flying and sharing aviation news and updates, different strategies and tools that you can use to help you make flying a much more enjoyable experience, or in some cases, get out of your chair and into the air in the first place. And Captain Eric, there you go. I believe you have something, you wanna lead us off with something here today, right?
Yeah, am I talking about the takeoff part, or am I talking about the other part, the overwater part? Which one do you want me to start with?
Let's do the other part.
Okay. So I wanted to talk with you guys a little bit about something that occurred to me the other day. That is newsworthy because there were no incidents, and it was not newsworthy, and that was worth noting. Unless you live in a cave, you'll notice that that extreme hostilities, which is the understatement of the year, are broken out in the Mideast. And at the time of the initiation of that, only the people that started the assault were aware that it was going to happen, and of the time. The pilots didn't know it, the airlines didn't know it, and the dispatchers did not know it. And there were a lot of airplanes en route to Tel Aviv, Israel, when that broke out in the air. The European ones, it was not such a big deal. It's not a long ways. They turned around and went back, but there were a lot of aircraft that had left the United States and were offshore over the Atlantic on the way to Tel Aviv. And the point I'm trying to make about this is, even though this came up basically instantaneously, the airlines and the flight crews and the individual flights were able to adapt and deal with this. Even though when we generally have on our dispatch release alternates for weather, alternates for various conditions, we don't generally have an alternate in case war breaks out. But nevertheless, these airplanes were fueled for contingencies at the destination airport, and they all individually with their companies were able to devise a plan to deviate to whatever alternate most suited passenger safety, the airline's convenience, and what they were going to do to reaccommodate the passengers who were obviously not going to be landing in Tel Aviv. And they all did this successfully without any problem. And I think that's notable. The only thing I saw in the mainstream news was one United flight out of Denver was actually in the air for 13 hours, which is nothing. If you're a 787 or a 777, they can hold double that in gas easily, and was out over the mid-Atlantic and turned around and went back to Denver. And the company deemed that the best course of action. Believe it or not, the airlines wish not to inconvenience their passengers, So if they can't get them to destination, they will often try and take them back to the origination point where the passenger's a little better positioned to adapt and deal with it than somewhere else. Although the bad part of my mind was thinking, gee, this would have been a good time to land in Bangor, Maine, because the leaves would have been changing and it would have been just very beautiful. But nobody would have packed for Bangor, Maine. So they the airplane, and plus the airline is going to need the airplane, and they need it in a place where they can use it, not Bangor, Maine. And so they turned around and flew it back to Denver. But all of this was conducted by many, many airlines without incident and without a problem. And I think that's notable. And I know you guys, our clients, have a long list of stuff to worry about and like to update it and keep it current. And so that one you could scratch off. And I wanted to tell you about that for that reason.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you did, because as news goes, if it bleeds, it leads. And as you know, the news are full of the other stuff. But as it pertains to all, and not just in aviation, I would imagine, but as it pertains to all of these industries that had to, think on their feet or think in the air, as it were, we haven't heard anything.
Right.
Right.
And you don't, when things go well, you really don't hear about them. That's just when things go poorly. And, it's the same thing with being a customer. You rarely make a report when everything was fabulous and love the product, but when things go poorly, you don't like it, then that's when you make a complaint. So
Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead, Dan.
that's the same kind of thing. So as Eric said, all of these planes did all those things, and there was not one word in the newspaper.
Non-event.
It was a non-event.
And I just wanted to point out that this is actually a really important psychological, I'm going to say, lever that you can use in your own favor, and how you're going to use it in your favor. And that is, if you know you're going to be flying in, let's say, a month or two, you're going to already make a list of what I would call affirmations, right? A list of positive statements. They don't say, I love flying, because your subconscious goes, no, you don't. And that's the first thing that's going to come up. However, it would be far more honest and powerful if you said, I don't prefer to fly, but I love to go and see my daughter perform at her theater, right? So, and this is how you take that very same psychological lever, right, that usually works against you, and employ it for you. And one of the ways you can do this, I actually don't have my phone within reach, believe it or not, but one of the ways you could do this is actually use your notes or your calendar app, and just make it a recurrent event, like once or twice a day, and have these couple of affirmations pop up, and immerse yourself for 5 minutes. Doesn't cost you any money, but it is a powerful way for you to pre-train yourself. If you know you have a flight coming up, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe in a month or so, that would be a great time to start that kind of way of working with yourself. And I saw Tracy's comment here. She said, such a good story. Love the positivity.
Yeah.
And we just really wanted to point out that, lots of airlines had to really act quickly, had to divert planes and figure all sorts of things out. And they all did this without a hitch, which is why you haven't heard about it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
which is why we wanted to bring it up.
Yeah. And a plug to the overwater oceanic air traffic controllers, when all of them at the same time said, and they had to go, you want to do what? Okay, we can do it. Just hang on a second. When all of them at the same time asked to turn around, and they handled it. So good for the overwater controllers too. I mean, that was big a shock to them as everybody else.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's move on because I was hinting at it already at the start of our show. If all went well, you should see that on October 21st, we have our Cleared for Takeoff 301 flight class. Unfortunately, without Tracy, who apparently had last-minute plans that prevented her from participating. But nevertheless, it's going to be an awesome class. And what I wanted to actually bring up today is the live stream. On Friday, October 20th, we, that means Captain Ron, Flight Attendant Diane, Captain Eric, and myself will all be at Air Hollywood, and we will live stream the pre-class, what usually is a pre-class webinar, which we switched up into a class format this time because we do have the mock-ups there at Air Hollywood. And you still have time to register and sign up for that live stream. And I highly, highly, highly recommend it because not only is it a great venue for you to watch, even if you're watching from the comfort of your own home or wherever you might be, but a live stream has a lot of other benefits as well, right? You get access, obviously, to the replay. It serves as a means of consistency if you already are preparing for a flight. And more importantly, and I haven't put that up here, and I think that's, I'm gonna just put this back up. I'll put the link in chat in a second. But more importantly, if you register for that live stream, basically this is what you can use before you get on your flight. So whether you are anywhere in the United States, in Canada, Europe, wherever you are, if you register for that class and you'll have access to the replay will also be available in the Fearless Flyer Club. Then you can go back to it before anytime you fly, which is really a great way of, again, practicing before you actually get on your plane. You guys are going to be there, and I'm excited to join you for that. So I don't know how.
It's going to be wonderful. It's been a while since we've been up to Air Hollywood, and I know we've all missed it because we really enjoy the opportunity to be on the aircraft mock-up and to have a little bit more lifelike. I don't even know if that's a good term, but experience. But we're all alive, so it's okay. But a real experience on that plane, and it's just a unique opportunity for us and for all of you to see what it's like. And so we've really missed this visit, and so we're looking forward to it.
Eric, anything else, Eric?
No, it's all good, and it is extremely realistic.
Yes.
If any of you saw that movie Bridesmaids, when the ladies are all on the airplane, they've been tremendously overserved and having quite a time. They're in the airplane. That was the airplane they were in. That's how realistic that thing was.
I sat in the seat. Actually sat in the seat that Kristen Wiig when she came up to first class. Oh, every time I see that movie, yeah. So that's the aircraft.
Yeah, and Michelle was a previous attendee. She said, "I wish I could hang out with you guys at Hollywood." Well, we wish you could be there.
Yeah, we'll miss you.
But alas, I hope that we can at least do that annually, maybe twice a year. Who knows? I mean, obviously they're busy with filming movies there and TV shows, so it's not so easy to schedule that and then also get this forward. So I wanted to just bring in a question. We moved on to the aviation news updates here. By the way, if you have any questions or if anything was in the news, please just put it in chat. We're happy to answer any and all of your questions. And one of those experiences that I want to talk about was someone actually today. It happened today, this morning in Dallas, Fort Worth, where I think it was an American Airlines flight at 8:30. So during the takeoff roll, and the person described it as they were already lifting off, all of a sudden the pilot slammed on the brakes, and they had to return to the gate. And before I continue with the story, I'm gonna bring you in there in a second, Captain Eric. But any of you watching, especially those, and I'm looking at you, Tracy, and at you, Michelle, any of you watching, what is that speed called that tells pilots whether or not they are going for it and taking off, or they are still within the bounds and stop within the length of the runway? Whoa, Tracy, right on. V1.
All right.
Right on. Awesome. Well,
And
thank
we're
you.
gonna have a short video in a little bit showing exactly where V1 occurs on a takeoff, and you're really gonna like it. Well, Dieter and I really liked it. I'm not sure about Flight Attendant Diana, but
I can't say for anybody else, but why don't you actually, Eric, because it may have felt to that person as if they were already taken, but maybe you can take us through takeoff, and from your perspective as a pilot, if something occurs, what are your options there?
so what happened, I'll just instead of doing all the through the whole scenario, but I'll talk about this scenario. What happened here is and it sounds like the airplane was going very, very fast, but at some point prior to V1, for a major system failure, an engine failure, fire, the pilots got a direct annunciation in front of their face requiring them to reject the takeoff, which they did. When they do that, the first thing they do is slam the throttles back to idle because they don't want any more thrust. What happens just a couple of thousandths of a second after that is the airplane applies maximum auto braking. The auto brakes work in a rejected takeoff mode, and the anti-skid works while it does it, but the stop is extremely violent, because they know that the system is built that, in this high speed regime, the airplane needs to be stopped as fast as possible. So the braking is really, as I said, really violent, but there's a break of 1,000th or 2,000ths of a second when the throttles hit idle before the auto brakes get applied violently and fully. And it would have felt like, well, it would have happened. You would have come from being pressed into the back of your seat from the high-powered acceleration to you kind of lifted off into the seatbelt going forward when the brakes were applied at the initiation of this violent stop. There's no, to quote my second favorite movie of all time, Princess Bride, it is inconceivable that the aircraft was in the air. That all happened on the ground, but there was that moment between hard acceleration and violent deceleration where your body fools you a little bit and says, gee, I'm up or in the air. And hopefully that answers that person's question.
So and that line or that point, that's V1, correct? Like where
Yes,
where
That
Decision.
definition of that is takeoff, exactly what you said, takeoff, decision, speed.
Mhm.
And if you have a very few major situations prior to that, you will stop, even if it's going to be a violent stop. If it happens after that, you will continue to take off, and sort the problem out in the air because the airplane's already gone too fast, using too much runway. It's much safer at that point to deal with the emergency in the air, fly the airplane back around and land with the full length of the runway available.
And so, as you were alluding to, when we started with that story, we sometimes pictures, tell a better story. And so we're gonna watch a really short clip, and then afterwards, you're gonna let us know where V1 would have occurred, what's before and what's after. Okay.
There's a test.
All
There's
right.
a test.
There's a test. All right. So let's see if
Pay
that
attention.
exactly. Let's see if that worked. And action.
Let me see you jump. Prepárate. Get ready. Get. Brilla. Ahí va allá. Todo el mundo. Let me see you
Love that.
I was on Fair to Flight Attendant Diane earlier. I said 2 out of 3 of us love that. All 3 of us love that. 2 out of 3 of us think it could be louder, and 1 out of 3 of us thinks maybe it's a little too loud.
One of the 3 of us already has tinnitus, and it's the ear thing.
So where in that clip, which I believe maybe we'll do that for all of our beautiful flyers going forward. But where was V1 in that clip? Like what part of it was V1?
Let's see if we see anybody here.
All right, Eric, are you still?
I'm still here.
Okay, so I just asked you where in that clip that we just watched, where was V1? Like where was that moment?
I was waiting to see if anybody responded, but if they didn't respond, my belief is watching that dog come across that V1 is when he hits the guy's back. Prior to that, he could reject the takeoff and he may be going, we don't know how fast he's going to be running nearly 40 miles an hour. He's got 4-wheel braking, but he could reject the takeoff and stop. But once he has hit the guy's back, he's going flying. Nothing's gonna stop him then. So that's after V1. There's no option to reject the takeoff at that point.
Well, see, I looked at that and I thought that it might be when his front paws lifted off the ground and then his hind legs propelled him to the guy's back. Because at that point he couldn't stay on the ground. He was already in the air.
That's probably good. That may be good too. Yeah, because he's not going to be able to break 2-legged.
He can't break.
We're like Monday morning quarterbacks here because this is a Belgian Malinois, which these dogs are incredibly fast and powerful. And we watched this on such an amazing slow-mo.
Yeah.
I think if you watch this whole thing in real time, it's over, very quickly. But I do want to actually, Vivana just made a comment here, just to say thank you to Captain Ron's Fearless Flight. Had a 101 call with him, best decision I could have made. Thanks to him, I was able to fly comfortably across the pond and actually enjoy my vacation.
Oh.
And that's what we love to hear, Vivana. Thank you so much for taking the time and share this, because that's what it's all about, being able to have the courage and have the tools that allow you to change your experience. And that's what, really is why we're all here, truthfully.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I think, Diane, you mentioned that
I did. There's in the Birds of a Feather.
Mhm.
There was one of the posters by the name of Denise, It's
Mhm.
interesting because this kind of feeds into the theme, what we were just talking about, takeoff and rejected takeoff and the speed going down the runway. And she said that irrespective of all her other fears, in fact, let me pull up her quote. She said, "I've never liked flying in general, although I think I finally convinced myself that turbulence is only uncomfortable, not dangerous." And she said, "But I've never really experienced really bad turbulence. I figured out what really scares me, and this is in caps. It's the takeoff, that feeling of going so fast, and it seems that you just slow down." Heading back to LAX on the trip out, I cried for 5 minutes during takeoff. So that is something that we've talked about quite a bit. And that is that there's such an acceleration down the runway and then the takeoff. And then and Captain Eric's going to chime in with the altitude. And then all of a sudden, they bring the engines back a little bit and everybody thinks, oh my God, they've turned the engines off and we're going to plummet and crash. And that's not really what happens. So Captain Eric, can you?
What she's referring to is when the takeoff is successfully made, as millions of them are every day, probably not millions, several tens of thousands. At 1,000 feet, we retard the thrust from takeoff power to a climb rating to continue to accelerate, climb, and climb out. We don't need that explosive amount of power throughout the climb. It uses a lot of gas, and there's a little bit extra wear on the engines because they get hot, and it's just unnecessary. But when you feel the pilots or the airplane automatically retard the thrust from takeoff to that climb rating, there's quite a sound reduction and thrust reduction, and you feel yourself coming forward a little bit in the seat and everything, and that's an unnerving thing, but that is an absolutely normal part of every normal flight.
I try with my passengers when I'm working and they make a comment, maybe when I'm going down the aisle about that feeling, and then, as Eric said, the noise reduction. I've had a lot of success in using an analogy with driving in a car, because that's what everybody is with which they're familiar. And so that might be, I might explain that as, okay, you're on a ramp and you're getting onto the freeway and you have to accelerate a lot because you need to find a spot to get in the lane. And so you're really speeding up, you get into the lane finally, and then you don't have to go quite as fast because you've already found your spot between a couple of other cars. And so you're maybe not going 85 or 75, but you're going 65. So you're still going really fast. And so the airplanes are still going really fast, but they're just not going quite as fast.
Good analogy. And remember, as we've said repeatedly, the airplanes are perfectly capable of accelerating to V1 and then continuing the takeoff, climbing out on one engine, retracting gear, flaps, accelerating, and continue to climb out on one engine. So with two engines operating normally and all that thrust, that's a lot more thrust than is necessary for a normal climb out. And you feel it when it is retarded from takeoff thrust to climb power.
And we often talk about occupying ourselves. And so Tracy has a great way how she does that. And she says that right at V1, she hits the start button on her stopwatch. And then basically just waits until about 10,000 feet. And that takes about 4.5, 5 minutes. And that's a great way to spend this time. And I'm sure Tracy does that, but what we also recommend is when you do that, that you actually monitor your breathing. And we have one really, really helpful breathing technique that we recommend universally, and that is the 4 in, 6 out breathing method, and which you can actually keep really good track when you're watching your stopwatch, because you will focus on the 4 in and 6 out. And That's a great way to actually go through those first 4.5-5 minutes, because the reality is most people tend to be a lot better once we hit about yeah, I would say cruising altitude, but even that first 10,000, 15,000 feet is like, okay, we're okay. So that's definitely one of those things that I would recommend. And again, if you have the Fearless Flyer, if you're part of the membership, and we actually have a breathing bubble in there that also accomplishes the same thing, 4 in, 6 out. And I mean, there are a lot of other things you could do, but that's definitely a very helpful one that we recommend.
I can remember a specific instance on one of my flights, and I had a passenger, and we were at cruise, and he was an anxious flyer to begin with, and he felt concerned that he was going to have a panic attack. And so I stayed right by him. I squatted down in the aisle. And one of the things that we have talked about is I had him look right at me, look me in the eye, and held onto his hand. And then we did the breathing. I worked with him, and we did the breathing together. And that really had a very positive effect. Just looking right at me, my holding his hand, and then breathing, and he was fine actually for the rest of the flight. It was really reassuring. So.
And that brings in another thing that we teach all the time, and that is, if you do fly with a partner, a spouse, or someone that you love and trust, then focusing, eye contact, kinesthetic touch, and also speaking, softly, or can really help. So that's, for example, I know we're 12 people who are flying, I think, on Saturday, and there's 8 companions. And if you ever have a chance to do a class with us, or even it would be great to do the live stream if you can fly with us, because we will talk also how your companions can support you on before and on your flight, during your flight. So that's a really, really big one as well. Yeah, is there anything else that we got cooking for tonight, or is that?
I think we've hit all the high spots.
I think so too. Let me just check if there's any questions. If you do have a question, now is your last chance. Otherwise, it'll have to wait until next Tuesday. Obviously, we're gonna be here, and like I said at the top of the show, the crew edition with the 3 of us will be every 3rd Tuesday of the month. So Diane, Eric, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your humor. And I'm so looking forward to actually seeing both of you guys in person at the Air Hollywood studios. So
I'm very excited about it. Yeah.
all right, well then, I hope you have a great rest of your night, and we're looking forward to seeing you next week. All right, good night.